At the worst, it was, definitely debilitating. It was, extremely frustrating. One way I would describe it would be like, if you've ever had the dream where you're trying to run and you can't run. And so for a workaholic, that was brutal.
Oh, yeah.
And not only can you not really get anything done, you have all this time to lay around and think about what you want to do.
Music helps us get through the hardships and heartbreaks of life. The songs come from artists who bare their souls and share their pain. Their music proves we're not alone. They felt just like you, and they dug deep and kept going. I'm Ethan Johnson, and this is Rockin' That Hard Place.
Welcome to Rockin' a Hard Place, episode 3. Today we're with an artist, songwriter, composer, film score composer as well, Pete Droge.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Today we're going to talk about good times, bad times.
Okay.
It's all going to be about Led Zeppelin from beginning to end. And I've got 4 main topics. The first one, your breakthrough, your big break.
Okay.
And the idea of you're working at Pycora's in Seattle,
That's right.
and then you're on David Letterman. Not like just like that, but can you talk about good times to start with for that?
Yeah, glory days. Yeah. I was thinking about that because I've been retracing that period on my Substack newsletter recently, kind of celebrating the reissue of my debut album, Necktie Second, with the double vinyl with bonus tracks and stuff. And so lately I've been going through and doing a multi-part series on the tour. And so going back in the scrapbooks, and I digitized a whole bunch of VHS tapes and old i8 videotapes from that period. And so that's all very, front of mind for me right now. It was, it was actually kind of a slow burn. The album, I got the deal in 93. So I was living in Seattle and, was around that whole late 80s, early 90s moment in Seattle.
Yeah.
And kind of watched a lot of other people get signed to majors. And by 93, January of 93, I kind of felt like I needed to change the scenery, moved down to Portland. And by March, I had, multiple major label offers after playing South by Southwest. It was like, just fairy tale kind of situation.
Right.
And then I spent that summer, I got to quit my day job. At that point I was working at Hot Lips Pizza in Portland. That's when I quit the day job and was able to stay home and write songs all day and party all night.
Yeah.
And by that fall, we were making the record in Atlanta with this, superstar producer named Brendan O'Brien.
Right.
Who was also my A&R person. Who signed me to American Records. And, and then around the new year, by May, the record was out. And we just started slugging it out on tour, van and trailer.
Yeah.
And crappy clubs and some good clubs, but, some crappy clubs as well. And we did what was called a residency tour because we couldn't get on any opening act slots as we had kind of hoped for. So we ended up going 7 weeks in a circle around the Northeast. So like every Monday we were in New York, every Tuesday, Boston, Wednesday, Philly, and then Friday, DC, and then we'd plug in other cities on the off nights. And it proved to be really successful because like in New York, the first week we were there, it was mainly like, record company and distribution people. And then it started to build. And by the end, the place was packed and we had, Rolling Stone and MTV, people were coming and checking it out. And, Sheryl Crow came in and sat in one night and Mike McCready came in and sat in. So we kind of had a buzz and, the celebs were turning up, partying with Nile Rodgers and John McEnroe.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a slow burn. And then we did another residency tour in the Midwest. And then we came out to LA and it just kind of kept building and building.
Yeah.
Kind of slowly but surely. And when things started to kind of get more traction was with the Dumb and Dumber placement with the single, If You Don't Love Me.
Right.
And, that's when things kind of accelerated at radio and we started kind of climbing up the charts. And, then the late night TV shows started to happen. The first one was actually Jon Stewart.
Oh.
And then, the Letterman was obviously a really big one.
Yeah, for sure.
Our next guest is an enormously talented singer-songwriter who tonight is making his network television debut. He's performing a wonderful song from his CD right here, Necktie Second. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Pete Droge. Pete!
And, the tours started to happen. Like the first big tour we got was Melissa Etheridge. So we were out opening for her, and kind of, it was like her first arena tour, kind of smaller arenas.
Yeah.
And then around into 95, we got some dates with Sheryl Crow, and then the big one was the Tom Petty tour. That was
Absolutely.
huge,
yeah. I heard about that. Tom Petty picks you to.
Yeah.
What did that feel like to be like, you're the opening band for Tom Petty?
It was a dream. It was a total dream. I mean, the whole thing was just unbelievably incredible.
Yeah.
It was a great experience. When I mentioned the residency tour, when we ended up on the West Coast, I actually met him first at the Bridge School benefit, which is Neil Young's big concert. So that was also another high point in that first album.
Yeah.
Getting to play the Bridge School was a great honor. And, got to meet Tom at that briefly. And then shortly after that, he came to see us play at the Viper Room.
Wow.
Super sort of, I wrote about it recently, like the epicenter of 90s hipness, Johnny Depp's club in LA.
Right.
And so he came out, and, kind of in hindsight, I kind of see that was probably our audition for the tour.
Right.
Because shortly after that, we were offered the spot. So
Incredible.
it's a dream.
For good times, meeting folks that probably were a huge influence on you. Neil Young, Tom Petty, of course, and people have compared you to Tom Petty in songwriting and lyricism and stories that are told within your songs. So all of that just must have been like
it was
pretty incredible.
It was amazing, and it was a good fit. It's like that audience really got what we were doing.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was just, and they were great. The headliners, they're not always super cool to the opening act.
Is that right?
Well, not always. Yeah. They couldn't have been cooler. Yeah, they were really, really nice to us.
That's
in fact,
good to hear.
there was one point where I was having trouble kind of keeping my voice in shape. And I said to Tom, I go, how do you do it? Your voice sounds so great every night. And he taught me his vocal warm-ups.
Wow.
He had his monitor engineer go set up and ring out my monitors, so really they took care of us.
That's fantastic. Cool. Yeah. It sounds like a great person, a great influence.
Yeah.
So there are lots of great times, being on late night TV, meeting these, icon heroes, just legends, who are also turn out to be wonderful people. What are some of the bad times?
Well, I would say the pressure of it all. I wouldn't say it was bad times necessarily, but I definitely felt a lot of pressure in those days. I was in my mid 20s, I guess, like 24, I think, when my record came out, or something like that, 24, 25.
Yeah.
And, you kind of get all this infrastructure around you, you have management and an agent and publishers and, all the label people and there's band members that are on the payroll, and then there's crew. And so suddenly you're sort of thrust into this kind of responsibility. And then I also kind of felt the pressure of I don't want to screw this up and lose out on getting another ticket. It's like, I was realistic enough to know that it doesn't necessarily last forever.
Right.
And so, it is, a fairly intense responsibility that you feel to kind of, to try to deliver,
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that. How are you measuring success at that time in your life?
At that time, I think I had kind of a skewed view of success based on the period we're talking about. There in the mid 90s, I think up until about 98 or 99, that was like the peak of the record business. It was before Napster came in and things started to kind of, tamp down the numbers on sales. So they were just, epic, massive blockbuster records, It was much more common back then to have, a diamond record, which is, sales of in excess of 10 million copies.
Yeah.
And, being around in Seattle, I had close proximity to some of those blockbusters, sharing management and friendships with Pearl Jam. So, I would come into the office and whatever was going on in my life, it's like, there's a note and like Oprah Winfrey called for Ed, it's like, how does this, it's like, so whatever success I did enjoy, always, I think I had less of a view of it. I kind of, it always felt more modest. As in hindsight, I kind of go, oh, it's actually a pretty good run. But at the time, it just sort of felt like, we never really cracked, like the top 200 album sales, that kind of stuff. It was always, somewhat under the radar as far as like, when you think about, artists that, their rocket just goes, straight to the uppermost of the poppermost. I'm forgetting what the question is now.
Well, it's really like, what are the
oh yeah, the measures of what success means.
Yeah.
I think we were listening to JJ Cale while we were setting up. Like, I always admired his career. He had other people cover his songs, and I'm sure he did quite well financially from that.
Right.
And then he could kind of quietly make his own records on his own terms. And he never seemed to like, play the publicity game heavily. He just kind of seemed to kind of do his own thing in his own time. And I always admired that. So my goal, I just always felt like, if I can continue to make records and, keep food on the table and a roof over my head, like that was cool with me. I didn't have sort of my eye on, the prize of like, I need to have like a gigantic mansion and, a Lamborghini. And everybody know my name. In fact, when I did enjoy whatever success I did, I was pretty uncomfortable with the fame part of it. Like I remember like, getting recognized at the airport, and then it was like kind of weird. It's like, I've known other people who kind of get to that place and they bloom and they blossom, and that's who they are. I was kind of more like, kind of like laying low a bit more.
Was that related at all to, I've heard that you've got a perfectionist streak in there. Is it that you just were cutting yourself down at that time or not?
I think I wouldn't think that way in those kind of situations. I would say where if it is perfectionism, where that was troublesome was more in like performing, like playing gigs. And, just not having the ability to kind of have it be water off my back. If things didn't go totally according to plan, or, if the monitors sounded like crap and I just couldn't hear my voice or whatever, then it would really, as a young, partying, kid, that stuff would rattle me. And now it's been interesting at this phase of my life to sort of return to performing after not playing live for many, many years.
Right.
And I can just take a much more easygoing approach to it and just sort of feel like, just stay connected to the songs and understand that the people that are there are really happy to be there.
Yeah.
And I know the feeling of going to a show and listening to songs that I've, have been a part of my life for many, many years.
Yeah.
And I don't care if the guitar is a little out of tune when I'm watching somebody else. Sometimes I feel for them.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, I know how that feels.
That's cool.
But I, as a listener, I'm like, that's cool. So it's more those kind of details and, high standards. I don't know if it's perfectionism. I don't know. Perfectionism always seems to have kind of a negative connotation to me, but I definitely had very high standards, and that kind of plays into what I was talking about before, the pressure and just sort of the desire to want to deliver, and that sort of feeling like the stakes are so high.
Yeah.
There's something that's really cool about the stakes being really high. The first thing that comes to mind is like, we play a gig at the club in New York, and it's like, I know that there's influential gatekeepers here that could make a difference.
Right.
And how you frame that, like you can be, really excited about it, and that can add some sort of adrenaline and some fuel to your rocket that, is positive, but it also can, kind of make you nerve-wracked, and it could be exhausting as well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that? The feelings that were when you weren't on that rocket, like right on, this is going to be great. Talk about the feelings when it wasn't always, if it was like that at times where you're like, I'm not sure about today.
I would just hit the bottle. Pretty much that would be it. That's how I sort of coped with that kind of stuff, is I just kind of numbed out and drank a lot. You know.
Would that be before performance, after performance? What was that?
A little bit before, never to the point of intoxication. Before
Yeah.
I might have, a couple drinks, maybe 1 or 2 drinks before a gig, but it was more like, I think about it more. I sort of flash on this factor more when I think about when I stopped drinking, and that was in between my first and second record.
Oh, wow.
And so yeah, 30 years ago, I just had my 30 year.
Congratulations.
In December, but
Well done.
like a rough sound check where the house sound person is cranky and the monitors sound like crap and
Yeah.
the guitar doesn't want to be in tune, and you just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. It was like that moment. So like on the second album, come into the dressing room and it wasn't like to kind of have that sort of outlet to kind of take the edge off or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think drugs and alcohol are definitely, that was my medicine of choice, I think, for all of this stuff. So if any of anxiety issues that I experienced, was did my best to self-medicate.
Yeah. It sounds a lot like starting a business and running a business, because you're in charge of everything. You have all these folks whose livelihoods depend on you, and then you have to deliver. And instead of just a business where you're selling a product in a storefront, it's your product. Like, you've got to deliver big time. So I can understand that pressure and what that might feel like. I mean, it's a completely different world than what I live in. But so you're using drugs, you're using alcohol primarily to overcome some of that stress or tension or anxiety. And then something happens within a tour I want to talk to you about, which is Shannon Hoon from Blind Melon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say he was a dear acquaintance.
Okay. Yeah.
He was a really sweet guy. Yeah, so we'd spent some time with him. Actually at the bridge, not the bridge school, but another time before the bridge school when I opened for Neil Young. Blind Melon was on the bill. That's when I first met him. And Elaine, my wife and musical partner, had known the Blind Melon guys from LA. And then we partied and hung out with him again. Actually, on the Tom Petty tour, he came out to see us.
Great.
And hung out.
So what was the impact? What we're discussing now also is Shannon Hoon died of an overdose during a tour, while you're touring as well.
Yeah.
How did that impact you?
It had a huge impact. I was at the time trying to slow down on drinking. And I had the brilliant plan. I had heard that, benzos, Valium and the like, that if you drink too much and take those, it will kill you. And so I thought, great idea. I'll start taking some of those and that'll help me slow down on my drinking. And they also happen to be an amazing buzz. So I was really on the brink, I think, of a serious habit with that stuff when I heard that he had passed. And so, the fact that he woke up, on his tour bus after a night of heavy partying, that was like the wake up call for me to get off the pills. And then it was maybe 2 months later that I stopped drinking entirely. So yeah, that was definitely a pivotal moment. I'm not sure, the sliding doors moment. If I had, learned of his passing, I'm not sure if what would have happened there for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible experience to have someone you care about and know die before their time, unfortunately. And it's really powerful that you were able to move through that and find sobriety and stay with sobriety too. That's just incredible. And how was Elaine involved in your both the good times and the bad times during that era?
I think she was incredibly helpful throughout all of it. She was, as a band member and as a life partner, just a very level-headed, even keel force. In that moment of choosing to get off the pills and then through the getting off of alcohol, just an amazing nurse nice.
Yeah.
So like when I first got sober, it's funny, I talked to a friend who was in recovery, and her advice was, get some bath salts and some tea and some candles.
Yeah.
And, I had that phone call while Elaine was at the store. She came home with bath salts, tea, and candles, So,
she's awesome. That's so
just a great life partner and support system.
Yeah.
And, just, as far as, on the road, having someone like that to share the journey with, and be that support was invaluable.
Right. And Elaine was with you prior to a record deal, and then she's with you now. So she saw all of that.
She saw a guy working at a pizza restaurant and said, that's the guy.
All the way back to the pizza restaurant?
Yeah, when I first met her, I was at Hot Lips Pizza in Portland. So
that's right. That's right.
A pizza gold digger. She was in it for the free pizza.
Well, I think people should take stock in folks that are working at pizza restaurants, because going all the way back to Picora's in Seattle, were you there with Mike McCready and Ben Shepherd?
No, Mike and I. Yeah.
Okay, and then Ben came later. He's like, I got to go to that pizza shop.
I don't know that Ben ever worked there.
I got that online. I'm not sure if that's accurate.
I think so, yeah. Ben, I knew. I met Ben the first day of high school for me, my freshman year. His sophomore year, I walked into a class and we both were sitting in the back of the class.
Yeah.
And I saw, I don't know if it was like Black Flag or some kind of stuff scratched on his peachy. And I was like, hey, And so we hung out a decent amount in high school. And some of my fond memories of Ben were, there was a place, we called it Reefer Beach, otherwise known as Waterfront Park. And we'd sit down there and play guitar.
That's cool.
And he was remarkably great even back then. And then
that's fantastic.
My very first band was called March of Crimes, which is like a footnote in rock history because Ben was in the band. So we overlapped for like a nanosecond.
Yeah.
So I was in the first incarnation of the band, and then my friend Andy, who was playing bass, they kicked him out, and then Ben joined, and I was in there for a minute, and then I quit.
Yeah.
And then the other sort of footnote in rock history is Stone Gossard was also like kind of almost maybe in the band for a minute.
Yeah.
It's like, I think Wikipedia calls him a band member, but honestly, I think I saw him interviewed one time talking about it. He says, I came to a couple rehearsals and they were like, no thanks. And so John Everson, the New York Times bestselling author, who was the singer under the name Monkey Seeker, when he talks about it, he said, I'm the guy who had the brilliant idea to kick Stone Gossard out of my band.
Right. He was the front man, right?
Yeah. Although I don't think he really kicked him out. I don't know. So it's a little blurry there. But
my gosh.
So March of Crimes, that was, if nothing else, I will go down in history as having been in a band for a nanosecond with a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member.
That's right. That's so cool. I love the story.
Yeah.
Next, I want to talk to you about good times, bad times in relationship to searching for your birth mother.
Okay.
And let's start with the bad times.
Okay.
How did it feel to be to know that I've heard from you in other interviews that from a very young age you knew that you were adopted. Your parents had told you. How did that feel as you're growing up? How did that feel as you're interacting with others? Just to know that I'm adopted.
I think there's maybe a couple layers to it. I think on the surface, I kind of didn't go there. It was like, all good, fine. I had great parents, Jen and Arnie Droge, were both really super cool, amazing, supportive parents.
Awesome.
So I kind of felt I'm good on that level. In fact, when the state of Oregon, where I was born, when they opened up the adoption records in the mid 90s, my parents, I remember Thanksgiving one year, they were like, hey, by the way, in Oregon, they have open adoption records. You can find out who your birth mother is or birth parents.
How old do you think you were when they said that?
That was like, I would say it was probably maybe 20, late 20s, 30, early 30s, somewhere in there. I can't recall exactly.
Yeah.
And I was just like, no thanks, I'm good.
Okay.
Just like wasn't interested, had no, just didn't even give it a second thought.
Really?
Yeah, just was, I'm cool.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's kind of one level. And then on another level, I think I kind of grew up with this kind of underlying belief that something was wrong with me. There was sort of this like, if my own birth mother didn't want me, I must be fucked up somehow.
Yeah.
And as I began to unpack what my adoption experience, what that separation from the birth mother, what that meant for me, like that was a really triggering moment in journaling one time when I just said, she didn't want me. that was just like the floodgates, that was like,
yeah.
so I recognized that was sort of this, I don't know if it's subconscious, unconscious, this sort of deep-seated thing that I maybe chose to not look at.
Yeah.
And so that was a big part of that process of unraveling.
So if you don't want to look at it, that feeling of not being worthy, if your mother didn't want to keep you, that you're not worthy, this thought, and you don't want to confront that, you don't want to deal with it. Does it show up? Does it show up in your relationships? Does it show up in your music? Does it show up in what you listen to and how you talk to yourself?
That's a good question. I think it does in ways. I think a little bit of the drive and motivation to succeed comes from that. A little bit of the "I'll show you" kind of thing. And I think, if you look at a lot of the, major household name, stars of every stripe, it's pretty common to kind of find some version of "I'll show you," whether it was the dad who said you'll never be anything or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think there's a component of that. I think that drive to just the sort of high standards or perfectionism thing is related to that. I think there's a factor of just trying to prove to yourself, that you're worthy, and that's a thing as well.
So a coping mechanism that was happening for you was perfection and striving harder.
Workaholicism was huge, at various stages of my life, for sure. And so once the sort of distraction and numbing of drugs and alcohol left the picture, enter workaholicism.
Gotcha.
So definitely, and that's where when I started to kind of come into midlife, it was really the workaholic nature that motivated me and really kind of gave me the desire to try to kind of get to the bottom of things, because I started to recognize a pattern in my work, especially in those years where I was less a performer and less a recording artist and more producer, engineer, mixer, and film composer. And so a lot of that is working in the studio, and a lot of that, especially the engineering and the mixing is very technical, difficult stuff.
Yeah.
And my standards would always be up here and my capabilities here, so I'm always just really struggling to, be happy with my work. It was like really a roller coaster. So it was actually the song "Two of the Lucky Ones," which has been, one of our songs that's done well for us.
That's great. Yeah.
Was the one that just nearly killed me. And it was really so much work. And just the question was why is this so life or death for me? Why, if my mix sucks, I suck. And then that roller coaster of just
absolutely
the work. And then when it all works out, it's yeah, yay. And then when it doesn't work, it's just oh, dire. And that was a lot of what kind of motivated me in midlife to kind of think about therapy and think about getting to the bottom of, what was driving all of that stuff.
That's so strange.
And there was a really interesting thing related to the adoption around that. In the first weekend when I had this sort of crazy epiphany that the adoption was this thing that I should look into. And I learned about Nancy Verrier and a book she wrote called The Primal Wound, that talks about the separation from the birth mother she believes is trauma. And then that trauma influences your development as a young child.
Makes sense.
So as I was kind of learning all that, all came up, in this one weekend. It was really intense. And during that weekend, Elaine and I just sat in bed drinking coffee. And we called it Psyche Detective, for kind of putting all the pieces together. And, oh, this makes sense. And, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And at one point, we started thinking about my relationship to music and this how important it is to me and how critical and life or death it feels to me when I'm working on music. And I remembered a few songs that I had heard at different phases of my young life that just had this, I don't know how to describe it, the word cosmic comes up, and this weird cosmic connection to these songs. There was Love Is All Around by the Trogs, Angel of the Morning, and Crimson and Clover.
Yeah.
So these were these songs that just, I remember a couple of them I heard at my break room at my first job at the Village Green grocery store.
Yeah.
And they had one of those boxes, if you're old enough, you remember, they had like little speakers that were kind of angled with like cloth over them. These like really old, you might not be old enough.
Oh, I'm old enough.
Anyway, this one, what's that?
Oh, I'm old enough.
Yeah, anyway, they had this little speaker and I was sitting in the break room.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I had just, smoked some weed, and I'm sitting there and eating my JoJo fried potatoes, and those songs came on. Particularly at that time, it was Love Is All Around and Angel of the Morning, and I just felt like this tractor beam, like what is it with this song? And Elaine and I kind of reflected on that when we were doing all the psyche detective stuff.
Yeah.
And we got curious and we looked them up, and they all charted at the time that I was in utero. All these songs were on the charts in 68, early 69. We're like, okay. So then I learned that, they've done experiments with kids in utero and music. And it turns out that they respond to slow tempos and consonants. So major scales and slow tempos.
Huh.
And I guess, I don't know exactly how the experiments work, but something like the kids, when you play it for them in utero, and then they respond to it in a way that they recognize it.
Yeah.
If it's slow music with major scales. And all three of those fit that. And so we were like, oh, wow. So maybe this music connection is sort of like the sense that, that's that connection that I had. And it's this way to sort of be in touch with my birth mother and that sense of union or whatever.
That's amazing.
And so in the mix, like I want my mix to give me that feeling. Like music can give me that feeling, and I'm striving to get that. And then when I can't achieve that, it's frustrating.
That makes me wonder, just like if you're striving for that feeling that you had from that, that epiphany moment that you just described, if that's also like seeking your mother's love, like is that all this is about,
Right.
Being loved?
Could be.
And if you do get the song right, she'll love you. If you don't get the song right, she won't love you. That kind of thought.
Yeah.
And then also just this other idea about, are you good enough, even if you don't play a single note, even if you don't write a single song, are you worthy of love? Like, where are you with that?
I would say meditation, and, I wouldn't say that I'm a Buddhist, but I'm Buddhish. That whole world, around, actually kind of before that sort of pivotal moment of, it was 2009 when that sort of weekend came, with all of those sort of breakthroughs around the adoption. It was a couple of years before that I, started reading self-help books, and Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, like that book really opened up a lot for me. So I think that's a work in progress. I think probably for a lot of people, it's a continuing work in progress.
Yeah.
My chronic fatigue. I don't know if I'm sort of jumping ahead to maybe another topic.
We're gonna talk about that.
Yeah.
Just one moment. If I stay with searching for your birth mother, I want to talk about the good times that came out of that too, which are unexpected. Because when you first learned your birth mother's name, that's a high, right? That's great. And some negative things happen immediately after, if you want to talk about that. And then we'll go to the good side of what
So about a month after that first Thanksgiving weekend, I felt like I was ready to search for my birth mother. And it was interesting. I look back and I was just like completely fixated on birth mother. It wasn't sort of birth family, broader standpoint. I was just like, I want to connect with her. Like that was it.
Interesting.
And I applied for the birth record on December 29th. And then 3 weeks later to the day, it arrived. And Elaine called from the post office and said, it's here. And, we had expected it. They told us originally it was going to take like 3 to 4 months. I have no idea why. And so it was kind of a surprise that it arrived. Yeah. And she said, do you want the name? And I said, okay. And she told me over the phone, and I punched it into the search engine. And on the first page of results was her obituary. And so that was just, mind-bogglingly devastating. And, if I had predicted the the level of excruciating grief that I would have experienced in that, I wouldn't have been able to predict how heavy it was. It was really, really deep.
Well, let's talk about that, because what we've just been talking about beforehand is a lot of your purpose and drive and all that subconsciously is mother's love. And you learned at this time that she had died how soon?
Just months before, yeah.
Was it 3 months?
It was in July.
Yeah.
So about 6 months.
It was about 6 months before you learned her name and looked her up. So now, what does it feel like? You said it's a low point, but describe that. How did it feel?
It was, boy, it's hard to describe. It was like, excruciating, devastating. It really derailed me. I mean, all of this really had derailed me a good bit, but this was sort of like a bomb dropping on the wreckage of the derailment. I mean, it was like really intense. Like I really had to pull back from work. And it was heartbreaking, and I had, in that time, from Thanksgiving weekend and kind of building up to this, I had really kind of built up in my mind the expectation of what it was going to mean to reconnect with this person.
Exactly.
So yeah, it was really, really hard. It was, I learned about a term called ambiguous grief. This was coined, I think, in the 70s by a woman. I forget her name, but so I definitely experienced that. It's like, here I am grieving, and I sing about that in the song, Song for Barbara Ann, that I wrote for my birth mother. It's like, pining for someone who I never knew.
I've got your hazel eyes and a streak that is blue. They say it's uncanny how much I remind them of you. I've got your photographs and your old violin, and that makes a difference, giving me glimpses of who you had been. And all I can do is keep singing for you, pining for someone who I never knew. Hard to believe it was over before it began. I just wasn't part of your plan, Barbara Ann.
Yeah, I don't know quite how to put it into words, but it was seismic.
Yeah, I can imagine with the expectations that you had about meeting her. I have so many thoughts about that right now, but one is about your grandmother, who you ultimately met. Didn't she say when she met you that she was pining to meet you?
Yeah, she did. Yeah,
and that's like the lyric that's in. It's how you felt about your mother.
Yeah. So that we're kind of doing the good times, bad times.
Yeah.
Definitely, it was a really bittersweet experience finding that obituary, because in the obituary were named the surviving relatives, my grandmother and my uncle. And again, thanks to the chick on the computer, I was on the phone that evening with my grandmother and my uncle. And yeah, she did use that word in that first call. Like, I've pined for you all these years.
Wow.
And she had just lost her daughter, her other daughter. So she lost my birth mother in July. And then my Aunt Cynthia died on the very day that I applied for the birth record.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, hearing from you was a gift to her.
It was. Yeah, it really was.
Wow.
And I think it also, it helped sort of, I don't know how to put it, but things were strained with her relationship with my birth mother. And so learning that it had worked out okay for me and my grandmother did not approve of the choice of giving me up for adoption. These are,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
Southeastern Ohio, Midwest, salt of the earth people, and family is everything. And,
Yeah.
and that decision did not sit well with my grandmother.
Right.
And so, like you said, she had always pined for me and worried, you know, and
Right.
wondered what
Yeah.
had become of me. So to see that, you know, I was all right, really was healing for her. And I think me sort of, you know, coming into her life at that time, you know, when she had just lost 2 daughters,
Yeah.
was pretty amazing. And yeah, just that whole, so there's sort of this, you know, two tracks here. You know, there's sort of the grieving of not meeting my birth mother, and then there was just this beautiful fairy tale of reconnecting with my broader birth family, and
Yeah.
that was incredible. So I was, you know, shortly after that phone call, I was on a plane for Appalachian, Ohio,
Yeah.
and a small town, you know, on the river there, and my grandmother and both of her siblings, so my great aunt and my great uncle, both lived right near each other, just on the Ohio River across from West Virginia.
Yeah.
And got to hang out with all of them and cousins and lots of relatives. And,
Fantastic.
you know, here was this middle-aged dude that sort of got dropped into the family.
Yeah.
He was just like, tell me everything, you know, like wanted, you know, just
Yeah.
was so interested in the family history.
Yeah.
They had a video of my great-grandparents. We all sat down and watched that together, and I was able to kind of learn, you know, what came upon me naturally. You know, like there was one moment that I remember where my great grandfather, he said, "If I don't have a job to do, I'm just not satisfied." And I was like, right here. And my uncle, he's like, me too.
Wow.
You know, so kind of learning that, you know, some of this stuff, you know, is in the genes,
Yeah.
I think was really helpful for me to kind of accept myself,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, and just be cool with it, you know, rather than sort of feel like this was a shortcoming or something that I needed to be down on myself about.
Right.
So there was a lot of that. We traveled, you know, all around in the hills there, and they're pointing out like, your great grandpa built that barn and he built that house.
Yeah.
And, it was really a remarkable trip. And, you know, my uncle and I were super close. You know, he's 8 years older, so he feels more like a long lost brother than a long lost uncle. We're really cut from the same cloth. I found, you know, that I wasn't the only one in the bloodline with drug and alcohol issues. You know, he's in recovery as well, so we have that in common. He was in bands in New York back in the day.
Wow.
We've started writing some songs together.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we're
that's
both
awesome.
so damn busy that it's kind of on the back burner, but we're excited to kind of get back to that.
That's a lot of good.
It's a lot of good.
Yeah.
And I would say, you know, the whole situation is good now. It's interesting. In another interview, you know, somebody was asking, well, what's it like to play these songs live, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm much more at peace with all of it, you know, like early on in, you know, missing the connection with my birth mother.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of sadness and pain around that, but I'm accepting of it all now as it is. And it's been really interesting, the extent to which I do feel like I know her and that I have this connection to her and that I'm sort of this continuation of her life.
Yeah.
And there was also a really cool moment when we made the video for Song for Barbara Ann. There was a photo of her ex-husband who, you know, essentially would have been my stepfather.
Yeah.
So just shortly after I was born, she married this guy. And he and I, when I first connected with him, had just a great connection, really cool guy. But we wanted to use a couple photos of him in the video. And so I reached out and I sent him the song. And I also sent him a song, Gypsy Rose, which is another one of the adoption theme songs that sort of tells my birth mother's life story around the time that she had me.
Why Rose? I understand
Gypsy
the
Rose.
Gypsy part, but why Rose?
You know, that was something that Elaine, she was on a walk one day and we were kind of looking for the title of the song.
wow.
And we didn't know that there was a famous burlesque dancer named Gypsy Rose at the time that we wrote the song. We also didn't know that maybe gypsy is not quite a word that people like to use anymore, but
Jimi Hendrix used it. Let's
yeah,
go.
exactly. So, but yeah, that, you know, I liked it because it kind of it sort of made me think of like the Grateful Dead or something. It kind of had that kind of spirit, you know, the rose thing that they said. But anyway, that song, you know, I wanted to kind of tell her story. And I was a little bit I don't want to say concerned, but I was thinking about like, I hope that this song paints a portrait of her that is accurate.
Yeah.
But then I thought, you know what? It's a song. It's okay. Just write the song that you want to write.
Yeah.
And if it's accurate, that's great. And if not, whatever. But I sent the song to Richard, and he said something along the lines of, "It's amazing that you never knew her, but you really tuned into her spirit."
Wow.
In that song, like you
cool.
really captured her, and so that was really special for me to kind of feel like I honored her life in that way.
That's awesome. So the good times in the search for your mother turned out to be songwriting. Was songwriting also healing for you? Was it therapy, or was it you're just processing everything that's going on? You're just trying to make sense of everything.
It took time before I was ready to write. I think it was maybe 3 years or so before we started writing Song for Barbara Ann.
Okay.
And that was the first song. And it was cathartic, and it was very emotional. I can still picture Elaine and I sitting in bed, working on that song and working on the lyrics. And when we got to the line, I just wasn't part of your plan. It was just like, just like, oh my God. It was just like, that was kind of tapped into that same moment, that I talked about earlier in journaling. So it was cathartic, and it was definitely part of the healing process for sure, to kind of, to work through all of that in song. And I think it's also kind of part of the healing to be open to sort of sharing that story.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that as well. Songwriting, probably for you forever, has had like a hint at what's happened in your life. It's influenced by what you're thinking about and what you've experienced. But this album is like going right in there, and it's brave, it's courageous. What was that like? What was Elaine sitting next to you saying, don't chicken out here, like it's okay? Or is this you internally doing it?
Flowed. It just happened. There was never really, we had Song for Barbara Ann. So we had this song, and at the time we were working on a side project called the Droge and Summers Blend, which was our little side project that really focuses on our harmony vocals.
Yeah.
And we recorded that originally for the Droge and Summers Blend, but ultimately I thought, okay, this kind of belongs on a Pete Droge record. So we set that aside. And then as we started to gather more songs and start to think about shaping up an album, actually there were different points at which we considered, I considered doing like a whole like concept album all about the adoption experience. I considered, maybe if there's not a whole album's worth of material of that, maybe it's an EP with the adoption songs on side A. And then, some of the artifacts that I got from the family were like all of her music notes. She was a music teacher and a musician.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had these, this box of all of her, and she was really into like, traditional Appalachian music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So maybe we do, Banks of the Ohio and some of these other songs that she had marked as her favorites. And that would be side B. Ultimately, we decided that Song for Barbara Ann would kind of be, I've referred to it as like the keystone song on the album. And then we were kind of thinking, okay, what other songs sort of work with this? Well, Lonely Mama, which was a second song. Like when I introduced those, when I play them back to back live, I've said, this experience of not meeting my birth mother was so, monumental, it warranted not one, but two songs. So those both speak to that. And then there's You Called Me Kid, which addresses the flip side and, my love and appreciation for my parents. My world was inside out. No idea what I was about. But then you saw me just as I was, a child in a daydream, trying to catch your slipstream. You called me kid, and
can't thank you enough for what you did. You called me kid. Never in this life could anybody find a more generous or precious gift to give. I got this picture of us on the beach, holding my hand and up our reach. We're running fast away from a wave and maybe trying to chase us, but we got smiles on our faces.
And then Gypsy Rose. And Fade Away Blue is kind of related in that way. That song is the one I'm thinking I'll play today.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
And then, the rest of the songs, okay, how can these sort of fit alongside those?
Mm-hmm.
And what basically revealed itself was that it just kind of becomes like, an autobiographical record. There's sort of this autobiographical thread that sort of runs through it. So you have, a song like Sundown at Francis Nash, we sort of drop into my sort of wild, drug-addled teenage psychedelic years.
Yeah.
You have like Fading Fast, which sort of, we find us on the road in the 90s and sort of that experience. And Bare Tree kind of speaks to the relationship with Elaine and the stability that's provided. And so, we sort of chose the rest of the songs. We had a lot of songs. We talked about, the writing and how it interacts with this. There was a lot of writing that came out of this whole period of my life,
Yeah.
So we had a lot of songs to choose from, and we sort of picked them carefully based on that.
And a lot of those songs were fueled by this search for your mother, correct? Like it had a silver lining in this wealth of creative expression that came, and this authenticity that came as well. The next area I want to talk about, and I could talk further about this whole whole area with your grandmother. She's still alive, correct?
Yeah,
and you're
we
still
talk
connected.
every Sunday. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah.
We have a real bond, and I was just out there, and I'll be back again this spring.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just think that I had a really strong relationship with my grandmother because my mother passed when I was about 20.
Yeah.
But that relationship was so important, so powerful for me.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about before we move away is move to the next topic is like seeing your family resemblances. And I think in one of your songs you talked about someone saying you have the same eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your uncle saying that?
Yeah.
The same eyes as your mom. Right?
Yeah. In that first trip, I remember we were standing out front of a Mexican restaurant on the sidewalk, and we'd just done like a big group family photo, and he was kind of like, it's not weird, but I'm looking at your eyes, and it's like, not only do they look like her, but like the way that they move when you talk, and my hand gestures, like my body language when I was speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also my great grandfather, the one I mentioned before, they were saying that I carry myself like him, and it's like physically, resemble him in that way. And they gave me his hat. It's this cool old Stetson hat.
Oh, wow.
And because, they had known that I wear hats a lot. And I put the hat on my head, and it was just like, it just fit perfectly.
Oh, that's so cool.
So yeah, that's something that's been really interesting and fascinating. And
yeah, that's cool. That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
The next section is the fatigue years, and you started to talk about it, chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
Let's start with the bad. Like, what's the lowest part of it, that experience, and what's a typical day feel like with that experience?
A typical day at its worst would be, no matter how much sleep I would get, I would wake up, I would be over there fixing my coffee, and before the water was done boiling, I would just feel like, just like my body just wanted to just no chi, no life force.
Yeah.
Just exhausted, just like fatigue. Mm-hmm. And early on, I kind of do a lot of time tracking and stuff. So in my calendar, I started saying, like super exhausted. And then it started to be like most exhausted ever. And then most exhausted ever with like 5 exclamations. And just like, and a lot of the conversation I would have about it would be like, I can't believe how exhausted I am. Like I can't even fathom this. And it would feel like, there were other times, at the worst where I would, I'd have stuff I had to do and I would be on my computer. And after like 10 minutes of just fielding emails, I'd be like, I need to lay down. I need
Amazing.
to get horizontal. And so, at the worst, it was, definitely debilitating. It was, extremely frustrating. One way I would describe it would be like, if you've ever had the dream where you're trying to run and you can't run. And so for a workaholic, that was brutal.
Oh, yeah.
And not only can you not really get anything done, you have all this time to lay around and think about what you want to do. So I had, endless hours of laying in bed with pillows under my knees and eye pillows on, trying to rest, or laying in the bathtub or whatever. And, the gears wouldn't stop turning of like, all the things I would want to do.
So did that trigger depression and furthering this idea of I'm not good enough, or if I'm not producing something, I'm not worthy of, I'm not anyone?
Yeah, it did trigger some depression, which I had wrestled with in my life before. To some extent. I always kind of would, categorize my depression issues as sort of mild depression compared to, when you hear about people who can't get out from under the covers for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
But it was significant enough that I recognized that it was an issue for a long time. I think because of the meditation and the self-help books and the therapy, the depression was not nearly as bad as it could have been. And it was actually, I would say, surprisingly resilient in those stretches to where when the time most commonly that the depression would set in would be when I would get a little bit better.
Yeah.
And then when I would have another crash. And that would be like, just like, that's what would get me. But those stretches, they weren't super persistent.
The next part is like, the self-help ninja and having good days, good times happen while having that extreme fatigue that's just debilitating. For sure. One great thing that came out of it, I write about this in the About page on my Substack, which is like, the silver lining appeared from the fatigue, which was it really made me sort of prioritize. Yes.
Okay. And I say, if there's one thing that I can do, what can it be? What's that going to be? And, prior, I was moving and shaking and doing, various different projects, client-based work for, scoring stuff or producing somebody's record or making my own music or all the stuff that comes along with being a quote unquote recording artist. You're spinning plates a lot to try to, keep it all going. And so at this point, it's like, okay, I only have this much bandwidth. And, the answer was just so clear that, the one thing, if it's only one thing, it's songwriting, period. And so that really, I know like what I say in the little About page on my Substack is like, it may look like I'm just lying on the couch, but I'm actually hard at work, trying to find a rhyme for orange, so that there's a part of the songwriting process that can sort of evolve even when you're sort of in that, rest mode.
Yeah.
So I was able to, really kind of continue to feel, reasonably productive and like that I was doing something meaningful with my life by working on songwriting. So that was a silver lining. I think just as far as the sort of growth and development and growing up, it was a lot to force me to kind of go like, who am I then if I'm not my work?
I love that.
Because I really had, my so-called career, stripped away. I was really, at a certain point, it was a couple of years before I finally said, okay, I just need to pull the plug. Like for the first 2 years from September of 2015 to I think it was November of 17, I tried to kind of keep it going. And that was really frustrating.
And the idea of something like going to LA to cut an album or touring that album, like those wouldn't be possible, right?
Not at all. But yeah, by 17, I kind of said, okay, I just need to like basically, retire. I need to go into like semi-retirement mode. And I just unplugged from everything And, that whole period of the really, debilitating fatigue years gave me a lot of time to reflect and do a lot of therapy and a lot of meditation. Like I was averaging, at least 2 hours a day of meditation. I was doing a lot of qigong and movement practices. My therapist, I took a few before I found the one.
Yeah.
But I found an amazing therapist. And we started to work through a lot of the capital T trauma stuff. And it wasn't just the separation from the birth mother trauma. There were other early childhood and later in life traumas that I worked with her on and discovered. Now, I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on the internet, but I do highly recommend EMDR, if you're not familiar with it, is an amazing therapy. So did a lot of like really, really deep work. And so, if I had just sort of stayed on the hamster wheel of work, I wouldn't, I still was doing that work before the fatigue set in, but it kind of supercharged it and gave me so much space to, sort of reflect and sit with that stuff and have the space to kind of let go of, the sort of the feather in your cap as fuel for life mentality, to kind of go like, and it gave me a lot of time to think about, what's important in my life. And, I had a lot of time in the bathtub to sort of look forward to, okay, when I am on the other side of this, what's the most important to me? What do I want to do? And definitely, I said songwriting number one, but making records and just recording in general, whatever that is, whether it's a record or a film score or just screwing around, having fun. Like I love songwriting. I love recording. So that was sort of the next natural step, was kind of figuring out, okay, how can I kind of start making a record? And we started working on the record while I was still squarely in the fatigue zone, which I still am. Like the fatigue is still an issue, but it's manageable at this point. But even it was still pretty bad when I started making the record, but I made it in a way where I would just do my tracks here at home in my own time. To like a drum machine or a click track. And then I would send in my co-producer in Los Angeles and then they would overdub down there. So I had this kind of nice, relaxed way of making the record, which I really enjoyed.
There's more I want to ask you about that with before chronic fatigue and before having your own label. What's your label called again?
Puzzle Tree Records.
Puzzle Tree. Yeah. You have to operate at the speed and timing and touring of whatever the label wants. Yeah. So how is life improved by having autonomy from that?
I really love it. And that was a shift that I made long before the fatigue. So in my life, I've made, 4 major label records, 3 as a solo artist in the 90s, and then 1 with my side project with Sean Mullins and Matthew Sweet called The Thorns. So we did a record for Columbia in 2003. But other than that, my records from that point forward have all been released independently. And then I released a solo record 2003 as well. That was kind of a hybrid. That was through a thing called United Musicians, which was Amy Mann, Michael Penn, and my former manager. Had sort of a label, like artist-owned label collective, and they had distribution through Red, which is part of Sony, or it used to be. So that was kind of almost on a label, but not really. But since 2006, my Under the Waves album, which turns 20 this year.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And we're considering a vinyl reissue of that. We'll see if that happens. But from that point forward, they've all been on my label. And I really like that, I think with Fade Away Blue, a point that I almost made earlier was like, there was a real desire to sort of share the story behind the album. Everything that we're talking about now, there was, motivation to kind of, talk about the broader context of the album. I didn't want to just kind of do what I did with my other self-released albums, which is to sort of lob them out, shop them around to film and TV and hope I get a good license and then kind of move on to the next thing. I didn't do a lot of, I didn't tour at all for, since The Thorns in 2003. Didn't do a lot, to try to rustle up publicity or anything. I just kind of quietly put the records out. But with Fade Away Blue, I kind of felt like, okay, there's more to this. Like I really want to try to, tell the story. And So, yeah. And now I'm sort of in this interesting spot of like, I feel like I'm the unfrozen caveman. You remember Unfrozen Caveman Lawyer? I'm the unfrozen caveman recording artist, where I kind of hadn't really been playing the game for a long time.
You're entering back into the recording industry in some ways with this new solo album, and it's not the same industry.
It's very different.
So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely feel like the unfrozen caveman recording artist. I'm like, what? I don't understand your modern ways. The other one is, I feel like the frog that's been dropped in the boiling water. Like all these people have been in there, and with the boiling frogs, right? They turn up the water as it, gradually gets up to boiling. The frogs that are in there, like they don't even think to jump out. It's gradual.
Yeah.
And then you take a frog and you drop it in, it jumps out immediately.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of the boiling frog on Frozen Caveman.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I've cracked the code
Yeah.
on like what that means for me. I will say, if I were sort of thumbing through the want ads, if you remember those,
Yeah.
probably don't exist anymore. But if I were kind of looking at the job description for recording artist, performing artist, 2026, I might go, not so much. Based, partly on the fact that it's like, I heard a marketing guru say, you're not just a musician, you're a content creator who happens to play music.
Oh my gosh.
And the good news for me is I enjoy the content creation.
Okay.
Like my Substack, I really enjoy it. It is a lot of work the way that I do it.
Yeah.
So it is, time intensive. And there is a part of me that goes, how many songs would I have written if I wasn't, putting together, all the posts for Substack? But I really enjoy the sharing aspect of it. There's, a thing that I do called From the Sketchbook. I'm so passionate about songwriting that to sort of share process,
That's cool.
I'll break out, little pieces of my little iPhone sketches of how the song evolves.
Yeah.
And then I'll write about, how it came together. And I've done other posts, called On the Record that sort of walk through the process of how the records are made. So I enjoy that. I enjoy, my video camera, and I enjoy photography. So, that stuff I'm not like, it's not like pulling teeth to get me to sit around and play with my camera and make a video of a performance. Like I do enjoy that, but just the hamster wheel of it, that it's sort of never ending. In fact, I recently had a call with a friend of mine is working with somebody who helps him with the Facebook, Instagram ads and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I had a call and I got like an hour full of just all of this information and how to, the algorithm and and you got to post every day, and then you got to do this, and then you do that.
Gosh. Oh my gosh.
And so hence 2026, I decided, okay, I'm going to step away from that for the time being. I'll keep with my Substack, and but I'm not going to perform. I have one festival booked this summer, but other than that, I'm like, I'm not going to play live. Partly, I loved playing live. It was so fun to get back to it, but the sort of promotion part of it, and it kind of becomes this thing where like you never get a break, because like tickets are on sale now and and then the show's coming up and then tickets are on sale for the next one. It's like this constant thing. And I just sort of wanted a break from all of that, and felt like I just want to be in the studio.
But the last thing that I really wanted to talk to you about before you share a song with us, which is fantastic, is part of that self-help ninja. I've seen and read that you've used a practice called gratitude and thinking about people and things that you're grateful for. So can you list for us like a few people, a few things that you're grateful for today?
Okay. Well, Elaine Summers.
Yeah.
That's the first one. And for many, many reasons, kind of, helping me sort of traverse the landscape of everything we've talked about.
Yeah.
She was amazing and an amazing, musical partner as well. So everything that I work on, she's involved in some way or another. So, 6 out of 10 songs on the new album were co-writes with Elaine.
And she understands your pain, she understands your joy, and she harmonizes with that, like literally harmonizes with that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. The next thing that comes to mind, I would say Community You know, I'm, just so grateful to be on Vashon Island with our community here, and our friends and just everybody here. Really cherish that, and I feel like on the island we have this sort of special kind of bond here because we're contained on an island, and we've been here so long that we have really deep roots. Just the simple reality of sight, hearing. I can walk. All of that, I can talk. Just being alive and being human, and that was a big thing with, sort of the relationship with my birth mother. Just gratitude for being alive and just life itself, and the beauty of this planet. That we have vocal cords, that we can sing. We have these things that have strings on them that we can put our fingers on that make sound, that makes us feel things.
Awesome.
All of that. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate you and your work and your honesty. And I'm going to step away and we'll give you a chance to play a song.
All right.
All right. Thanks. Pete Droge.
Devil's died through and through. Every fiber of me was dyed in the wool, but that don't mean I won't come clean. Now when the tears come, I know I got work to do. I let the tears run. Fade away blue. I'm weathered and worn, tattered at the heel, unadorned. I'm so broken in, thinning at the knee, finding comfort in my own skin. Now when the tears come, I know I got work to do. I let the tears run, fade away blue. I live in the fray and turn another new shade lighter every day. Another walk in the sun, another hand-me-down child.